Is that who we're waiting for right now?
Oh, hello, everybody. Yes, I am here. I was just waiting for
Welcome.
my permission to go.
Oh, sorry about that. Go for it.
Oh, absolutely. No worries. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. Oh, I'm going to start sharing my presentation. So we are back. The dual language team at DCYF is back, and we're looking forward to sharing information about our dual language designation. Myself and Charlotte will be presenting the information for you, and then Yolanda will be monitoring the chat box for any questions that do come in. And let's get started. So last time we joined this group in December, we focused on the dual language standards and best practices. You all shared some of the dual language work that is already happening in the programs that you support. We're going to briefly summarize the work that you shared in the upcoming slides, and our primary goal for today is to focus on the dual language designation. We'll be sharing background information on the designation, an overview of what it will look like, and a toolkit of supports that we put together based on the feedback that we've heard from all of you. So as a reminder, this work is funded by the Fair Start for Kids Act Section 305, which directs DCYF to establish a designation for licensed or certified programs accepting state subsidy and ECAP or early ECAP programs. This bill is now law under RCW 43-216-592. And then we also have a WAC going live in early February, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in our upcoming slides. And so here is just a glance at our project timeline. We started our work for the dual language designation in December 2021 with an advisory group, which some folks on this call are also on that advisory group. Since then, we've had many meetings and many great conversations about how we support and serve multilingual children and families and the adults who work with them. We are currently on our implementing phase, which is our third phase, which really consists of designing coach and provider supports so that in the spring, we can be ready to open the designation request. We're going to be launching the dual language designation as an early adopter phase to allow us to learn and adjust based on experience and data. We are still defining what it means to be an early adopter for the dual language designation, and we will be doing that a lot with your help. So in thinking about the designation work behind the dual language standards, as well as the design and engagement work of the dual language designation, it really is about making sure that we put together and design something for those who we serve. Sometimes that means disrupting systems and leading the change that we know needs to happen so that our early learning system reflects equitable and inclusive opportunities for children and families. We worked with an advisory group of folks across the state from different language and geographic backgrounds. We work with tribal nations, and we work with providers and coaches. And together, we put together this vision for dual language for our state. So in December, this is a very brief summary of what you shared is already happening in the programs you support as far as they relate to the dual language standards. We're in the process of connecting the dual language standards to the quality recognition process, and we really want to thank you and our partners for being true champions of this work. So truly, thank you so much for all of your input, all of your best ideas, and we really hope that what we've put together reflects your best ideas and your input. I'll leave this slide up just for a couple more seconds so you can kind of take a look at the things that you all shared back in December.
Thanks, Athena. Hi, everyone. It's great to see you again. Just a reminder of who I am. I work at Department of Children, Youth, and Families. I'm on our Early Achievers team as our Government and Partnerships Liaison, and I have been so thrilled to be working closely with Athena and Yolanda on this dual language designation work. And so I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the overview of what the designation will sort of look like and some of those details. All right, so we plan in spring of this year to be launching our early adopters phase. Just like those of you who are aware of our previous early adopters, we really plan this to be a learning phase. We really will take everything that we learn to kind of inform what we need to do to move forward and continue on that quality improvement journey. The process for requesting a designation will be in CC. So hopefully all of you and many of your providers will be familiar with CC and feel that this is a familiar process for requesting designation. We will be distributing the funding that we have available for dual language designation based on priority points, which we'll get into a little bit more on the next slides. So we want to be clear that any early achievers participant is eligible to request a designation if they feel that they're meeting those sort of baselines for implementing dual language in their program. We will, however, be prioritizing funding while the funding permits to particular programs. So we'll talk more about that, like I said, in the next slides. So even if we run out of funding, programs can still be designated, right? And this designation will be indicated in their CC, it will show up on their merit and eventually on childcare checks. So we really feel like it is a badge of honor to show that you are doing this very, very important work for children and families. One other thing to know is that we'll be reviewing designation requests on a quarterly basis. So there's not one hard deadline for providers to get their designation requests in. Any provider, I see Shanti, your question in chat. Any provider that participates in Early Achievers, yes, is eligible to request a designation. They would not be eligible for funding if they're not accepting subsidy or ECAP, but they would be eligible to get a designation. I hope that answers your question. Oh, and Angie, yes, they must be in Early Achievers. Oh, just a second. Sorry, let me get my notes up here for this next slide. All right, so let's get into the money. The awards. So funding will be awarded per classroom or learning environment, and we'll prioritize that funding based on specific factors. A facility may receive up to 10 awards. So for example, if they have 10 classrooms that are providing dual language teaching and learning, then they would be eligible for a funding award for each of those 10 classrooms, if that makes sense. Dual language classrooms will be eligible for $2,700 per classroom. Tribal language revitalization classrooms will be eligible for $4,100 per classroom or learning environment. And our prioritization is here on the screen. Priority 1 is going to our tribal language revitalization programs or programs that meet 3 or more of the prioritization factors, which we'll look at on our next slide. Priority 2 will be folks that are meeting 2 or more of the factors, and priority 3 will be 1 or more of the factors. All right, so here are the ways that we are prioritizing, and we came up.
I think Charlotte's had to reconnect her audio. So Charlotte, if it's okay, I'm going to answer one of the
I'm
questions
back.
in the chat.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, Charlotte, while you're reconnecting to audio, there is a question in chat. Could you talk more about why the award amount is different for tribal classrooms versus dual language classrooms?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question, Leah. And you probably are anticipating that providers will be asking that question as well. The reason that we came to that conclusion was again, in concert with our advisory group, with our Tribal Indian Policy for Early Learning Committee, as well as some of the roundtable sessions that we hosted for our tribal partners. And really in recognition that tribal language revitalization, tribal language in many of the tribes in our state is at risk of becoming extinct. And tribes do not have access to high quality printed materials or culturally appropriate play materials that they can just go online and order, right? So often what they're having to do is create these things for themselves. So in recognition of the fact that we are really trying to support them in their efforts to revitalize their language, that's why we have decided to offer, that's why we, in connection with all of our partners, we made that decision to have a higher rate for tribal language classrooms. I hope that makes sense. Thanks, Leah. All right, so like we said, prioritization will be for tribal language revitalization programs, as well as for these 3 additional factors here. So these prioritization factors are found on DCYF's early learning dashboard, which the link is there on the screen. And and Athena just popped it into chat if you want to take a look at that more. This dashboard is updated regularly by our Office of Innovation, Alignment, and Accountability. So this is up-to-date information that we have on extreme childcare access deserts. We can look that up by zip code. Marginalized low-income communities. And what that means is areas where there are high rates of child maltreatment, childhood poverty, and rural counties. And communities of color is our other prioritization factor. So that's determined by a community that has over 50% children of color under the age of 15. So that is how we will be prioritizing who receives funding. All right, so that was a lot of information. I know it's a lot to process. We did want to take some time for some reflection coming up next. So in this opportunity, we're hoping to have you take some time to reflect and think about, how do you envision providers using this funding? What are some examples that you've seen in the field that where an amount of money could support language development? So if you'd like to unmute or share your ideas in chat, we'd love to hear them.
Thank you, Polly. I've heard really, really great things about the Soy Bilingüe curriculum. And I see a lot of head nods, so y'all must have heard the same good things.
Yeah, having extra staff, absolutely. Or bringing in outside teachers. These are all great. Thank you, Carmela, for sharing. Those are wonderful ideas. Absolutely. I think there's so many wonderful materials, books, curriculums out there that people want to be able to bring into their classroom space. And so being able to give them this funding is just really exciting to make that happen. And then I love all the ideas I'm seeing too around how to increase that family engagement piece, right? Like translation services, or going on field trips. All of those things are great ideas. I love that.
Yeah, we knew y'all would have some really good ideas.
I'm sure we'll be saving the chat on this one.
Oh, yeah. All right, so let's leave maybe like 30 more seconds to keep these ideas flowing before we move on to the next part.
Okay, Yolanda, did you want to head to the next slide? Thank you. All right, so the next thing we want to do is share some of the supports that we are building to help people understand what is this designation, how to apply for it, what kind of support do I have if I'm trying to meet some of these standards. So we'll share some of that with you and get your feedback on what else we should be creating or thinking about, also on how clear our messaging is. So we know that as coaches, your role is to help providers navigate these processes and early achievers, right? So as they're thinking about committing to a dual language designation and to growing their practice, we want to make sure that you all have the resources that you need to be able to support people in thinking about that. So we also just want to emphasize, as you're looking at this, we hope that this is not something completely new or different, but that it fits in with the work that you are already doing in supporting providers. All right, so we are in the process of connecting the dual language standards to the quality recognition process. So we want to remind you that this designation has been designed to align within early achievers. It's not a separate thing. It's simply there are points along the way where folks will be able to provide evidence of meeting these standards. So we put together a toolkit that has designation-specific items such as a designation overview and a how-to guide. And then we also have some additional resources to support and grow provider or teacher practice. So we're going to send you out into breakout rooms to take a look at some of these toolkit documents. And we want to hear from you if you feel like the documents and the instructions are clear, if they answer your questions, and what else you would like to see. Can we share the Jamboard, or I can share it on my screen? All right, so just an idea of what you're going to be taking a look at when you go into these breakout rooms. And apologies, because it's a lot of information to fit on those small slides. So hopefully when you're in your group, you'll be able to zoom in and see it a little better. But the first slide here shows the dual language designation overview. So it answers the questions like what is in the designation, who should request it, and why should I request it, those types of things. So if people are considering a designation, this is kind of that guide to talk through together. On the second slide, is not the entire step-by-step guide, but part of the step-by-step guide, just to give you an idea of what we're creating. And we'd love to have your feedback on whether or not you feel it's clear of how you would go into CC and request a designation. So we welcome your feedback there. And then on the third slide, we've got some, third through the end, we've got some additional resources that you can take a look at. Things that are available to you and to all providers in the state free of charge with your WIDA membership. And some additional resources that we will have on our website and that we'll have for you to share. Oh, yes, about the Jamboard. We'll get there in just a second, Kim. So, what we're hoping for you to do in your breakout rooms is, like I said, to look at these, tell us what else you need, tell us whether it's clear. But here's the deal. Because we're having to use Jamboard today at the last minute, not everyone is going to have access to it. So I'm going to ask people actually to go out of it right now. And then when you get into your small groups, choose one person per group that's able to share their screen. Does that make sense? So not everybody's going to be able to see the Jamboard on their own computer because there's just not enough space. But when you get into your small group, if one person can open it and share their screen and be kind of the note taker, then that should allow everybody to be able to do that. So once you're in your small group, we'll come and check on you, make sure you have access to the link, make sure that you can get in and that you understand what you're doing. But I think we're gonna try this out, send you out into your breakout rooms. How long are we thinking?
I believe we had set them up for like 12 minutes, Patricia, is that correct? Yes, I see her nodding her head. Yeah, and really answering the questions, do these documents help? Is there something else that's missing? What else do you want us to produce for you? So yeah, like Charlotte said, we'll be bouncing around to the different breakout rooms to make sure that you feel comfortable and you know what you're doing. And
Yeah.
I think we're ready, right?
Yeah,
Right.
I think before you go out, just copy that link, just copy it so you have it. And then you'll be ready if you are the chosen one to share your screen, then you'll be ready to paste it and open it when you get in your group. Because I think I've had experience where my chat goes away when I go into my group sometimes. So we don't want that to happen.
Are you ready?
I think so.
Before we go, are there any other questions? Or we'll catch you in the breakouts. I see people saying catch me in the breakouts. All right, we'll do that. See,
Yes, everyone, I understand, and I'm so sorry about the last minute shift to Jamboard. I'm not as versed in Jamboard, so I'm not sure if there's a way to like lock something so that you're not able to move it around. But while you're in there, if you could just try your best not to move the documents. If you need to zoom in, you can find, there's a little magnifying glass with a plus sign that you can use to zoom in your screen so that people can see it better. Yeah, hopefully that'll help. Patrick, I see you have a question.
Oh, it's not really a question, but it's like a reflection. So in our group, we kind of struggled with maybe sharing some things, or maybe that we're just processing all this too. So one thing that I thought of was, when I just kind of shared my own thoughts about all this, this is a long time coming for a lot of providers and teachers that have already been doing this work. And it's an opportunity for, new providers to this value of honoring, protecting culture, language, learning that's taking place, exposure to different languages. It's just an awesome thing that I know is happening. And, it's not always easy to roll this out, but if we're thinking about this, think about yourselves. Some of you were dual language teachers. Some of you can connect with your providers to let them know this is available. And it's just this is some things that we could process too when we're getting stuck of what can we add to this, or what are some thoughts we can draw from those experiences. And that's just what I wanted to share.
Thanks, Patrick. Wow, that was amazing. And you're just always such a champion of our work. And I just really appreciate those words. And I agree, you can think about that, and also think about those children and those families that that are going to benefit from this. It's so exciting. So we want to make sure that we're getting the information out, clear, people feel like they can do it.
So, can I piggyback off of what Patrick just said? I'm really excited about this. I think this is so critical, and I think a lot of providers are going to be excited about this. And because of the importance of this work, I think for me, it would have been helpful if I had the documents ahead of time to review. And then when I came to the breakout room, I felt like I would have had more to contribute, because I was just trying to struggle to read everything
Yeah.
and make sense out of it. And and because it was so much, I think I would have needed that prior work done.
Thanks, Teresa. That's really good feedback. And we'll try to do that in the future. And for what we'll do, what we can promise you is that we will send this to you in an easier to review format for you to comment and give your feedback on. So if you're someone that needs more than 10 minutes to process, I feel you, I see you, we will get that to you.
So I truly apologize that things were rushed. So I guess my question is, what time do we go until? 4 or 4:30? That's my first question.
4:30.
So what we can do is we can go back into breakouts. And what I've done is I've started putting these documents in a Google document, and maybe that will make it a little bit easier to view. I'm not sure if it would. And what we also can do is absolutely leave the Jamboard and the Google document available for your review. So you don't have to do it on the spot right now. And we can leave that open for the next 2 weeks so that we can still capture your feedback. But let me know what your preferences are. Do you prefer to go back into the breakout to take another look at it? And we can look at the Google document where I've copied most of the toolkit into, or do we want to move on? Let me know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I'm seeing lots of move on, and it was pretty loud and clear before. A lot of no's, not to return to the breakout rooms. And I think it's primarily because it's just so much information to try to take in, digest, and make sense of in a short amount of time. So
yeah, we can definitely appreciate that. My bad. I was like frantically copying everything into the Google Doc when that vote was happening. So I didn't see any of that. But okay, so then what we will do is we will leave those the Jamboard and the Google Doc open for you for the next 2 weeks, so that you can provide us your feedback. So you can take your time and really look through those documents and give us the feedback that you think is going to be really meaningful, so that we can make sure we are giving you the toolkit that you want.
There's one question in chat. Tony wants to know about those latter documents. Are those resources produced by DCYF or from elsewhere? So those ones on slides like 3 through 7.
Yep. I'm sorry. I have to acknowledge Bob's dog really quickly before I move on. Okay. Yes. Those documents 3 through 7 are from other places. So Washington State has a partnership with WIDA to access their resources. And those are just 2 of the resources that we pulled from their resource bank to show you and include in the toolkit. Those are not DCYF produced, but we do have the rights to use them. And so do you. And so do all early learning professionals in our state. And then the other 2 documents from the Office of English Language Acquisition, those are federally produced documents that we also do have permission to use. But you are not required to. There are just additional resources. And we can certainly email those links out to coaches.
Yeah. As soon as I have my Miro account up and running again, we'll get you a better version. You guys, it's been a day. All right.
Truly, like this meeting started at 3. At 2:30, we're like, oh my gosh, it's still not working. We got to throw everything on a Jamboard. So our bad.
Anywho, so we can move on to our next order of business, which is we wanted to share with you some scenarios. And I already heard this coming up in some groups, like, well, I know a provider who has one teacher and one kid. Would they be eligible? So we were going to share some scenarios that we had come up with. And then we want to hear from you what you see. So scenario 1 here. I support a family childcare home with 12 children. 7 speak Spanish as a first language. The provider uses Spanish 90% of the day. Should they request a designation? Oh, I'm getting interrupted. You got it. I'll be done in a second, honey bunny. Scenario number 2.
Oh, my bad.
If a provider in my caseload is a family childcare home with 4 children, 1 speaks Mandarin, 2 speak Vietnamese. The provider speaks English 50% of the day and uses Mandarin and Vietnamese the other 50% of the day. Should the provider request a designation? Yeah, is this taking you back to your SATs? Yes. So the answer to both of those is yes. Yes, Carmen, that's exactly right. Yes is the answer to both of those scenarios. All right, so let's move on to some other scenarios. All right, so I support a center with 4 classrooms. 1 teacher speaks Russian and rotates throughout the classrooms, is a floater who uses Russian the entire time she's with the kids. Should they request a designation? Yes. And programs providing 50% of the day in that partner language may be prioritized. So for example, if the floater becomes a classroom lead or assistant and provides at least 50% of the child's day in that partner language. Scenario number 4, a provider in my caseload has a staff member who speaks Somali and is working towards certification, STARS training. The staff member spends half of the day with children and uses Somali the entire time. Another teacher comes in and provides the remainder of the day in English. Should you apply? The answer is yes. Okay, so those are some different scenarios that we came up with. What we're wanting to do in this next breakout room is for you to brainstorm some scenarios. They don't all have to be scenarios that you know the answer to. Maybe there are things where you're like, I don't know, and put them on there because that's going to help us as we develop some resources for you all and for providers to be able to anticipate and answer some of those questions. Mandy, I see your question in chat around if the teachers leave. I think that's a common question. So please include that on this Jamboard. And Jessica's asking, what would be a no scenario? That's a good question.
Oh, man. So a no scenario might be a situation where maybe you have a sub come in who occasionally uses a few words in another language. A no scenario might be if you don't have a classroom teacher or a classroom lead providing support in another language. So really, and you know what, I feel like, okay, this is a good time for me to show you my Jamboard. So part of the opt-in process that I don't think we got to show you in our other documents is that there is a commitment statement that providers requesting the designation will have to attest to. And that commitment statement.
Can you
Just
zoom
my
in,
Jamboard?
Athena? Yeah, that's the Jamboard.
Okay.
We can see it, but it's just really small. So if you could.
Is
zoom
it
in.
tiny? All right. So essentially, the commitment statement says, I'm requesting to enroll for a dual language designation. This means either in my program, I have at least one dual language classroom that spends at least 50% of the day in the non-English partner language and has at least one child that speaks that non-English partner language at home. So for example, if you are a program that has Spanish speakers, and you are an English Spanish program and you provide that linguistic support in Spanish at least half of the day with that child, yeah, you should absolutely consider applying. Or that could mean that in your tribal language revitalization program, you have at least one teacher providing instruction in the tribal language. And we do acknowledge that not all tribal languages are fully flushed out yet. So we are not going to be expecting for a tribal language program to receive this funding and receive this designation that they are fully providing 50% of the day in the tribal language. We know that that just is not realistic or attainable for some tribal language programs. So we included this commitment statement in the Jamboard so that that can kind of get your mind jogging about the program that you support, right? So, oh, do I have a program that uses 50% of non-English in their with their children? I'll pause there because I'm starting to get into rambly mode.
You know what, Athena, so let's think about how we can make these things easier to see without people having to move things around and make them bigger. So Athena's going to move it around, make it a little bigger so that it's shareable and you can see it in your breakout rooms. When you go in with your group, please try not to move the scenarios or the commitment statement around. If you need to zoom in, you can go to the upper left-hand corner, like I said, where the magnifying glass is, and that kind of helps to zoom it in. And I saw someone say it gets blurry. I think if you just give it a little bit of time, it'll load and unblur for you. And then Athena's going to make a few extra slides. So you can go to those extra slides and put your sticky notes, your scenarios on those extra slides after you've read through that first page. So Leah, the next steps after everyone shares the scenarios, you can talk them through with your group and talk about how you would support that program. But also this is really, for us to be gathering information. What kind of programs do you support? What do you see out there? And what kind of questions do you think are going to arise? So we'll take all of this information that you're giving us and use it to inform some guides going forward, right? So that people can have this information, like it's sort of a Q&A, right? Like, should I apply? Should I not? What do I need to do to be able to apply? Those types of things. So if you have a question, chances are someone else has a question about this too.
Yeah, and this is really an opportunity for you to give us those specific scenarios that you work with, like the ones we're seeing in the chat. So I'm copying those over to Stickies as well. And then we will come back to you with answers to these questions. What other questions do we have before we move you into breakouts?
Athena, there was a few likes for going back to the example about the floater. Can they only support 2 classrooms?
I think it's the question about 50% of the day I think people are having.
Okay.
Scenario 3.
Yeah. So ultimately, our goal with dual language in early learning is that classrooms are providing children are receiving at least 50% of their day in the non-English target language. We understand that some centers, facilities, and homes might not have that capacity right now. And so we really are trying to build this to prioritize programs who can make that happen and also support programs who need additional assistance. So if you need another floater, or if you need anything else to get to that dual language designation, we want to support you along the way. I do not want to begin to dictate how centers run their programs or how they use their floaters, so I don't feel comfortable answering that question. But I will open it up to maybe anybody else on the dual language team who would feel comfortable answering that question.
I also I want to go back to this idea. This is an early adopters phase, right? So we're going to learn a lot from this first phase. We're prioritizing these 50-50 because that's what best practice tells us. However, we're going to learn so much about the landscape of what is happening in the dual language world as we go through this process, and we will use that to inform changes that we can make to make this more supportive moving forward.
And I am seeing questions about alternating days. Yeah, that totally. I would request that designation. So let's, again, when we move into our breakouts, let's have that one person share screen to view the Jamboard. I'll let you all determine who you want to assign to do that. And I'm not sure, there's a lot happening on all my screens right now. I'm not sure if I answered Leah's question, but yes, we are going to compile all the scenarios you give us, put it into a document and let you know, yes, not at this time, or do this in order to be ready to submit. All right. Anything? Oh, okay, cool. We're going. See y'all soon. So folks get back. So while I reorganize my screens, all right. So it does look like most people are back. So let me resume sharing my screen. And really, we appreciate the grace that you've extended us, your patience with our technology. Technology is always perfect, right? So we toyed with the idea of sending you these documents beforehand, and we just couldn't decide. But now what we are really hearing is that it would be really helpful if we can send you these things beforehand, rather than have you look at it in a 10-minute breakout. So that is really great feedback for us, and we will make sure to make note of that for future appearances. Thank you so much for sharing those scenarios on the Jamboard. We will, as I was moving through breakout rooms, I was hearing some really great conversations, some really great questions. So I encourage you to continue to add those scenarios, those questions to our Jamboard. And just like with the toolkit Jamboard and Google Doc and Miro boards, we will leave those open for the next 2 weeks for you all, so that you can go out, think about it, talk to your providers, and come back with those questions and put them on there for us, so that we can truly prepare a toolkit that is going to be meaningful for you. With that being said, thank you, Yolanda. With that being said, there are a lot of communications coming your way soon, and you can be expected to be notified via GovDelivery when these publications go live. So first up is our dual language standards and best practices. These have been translated into Spanish and Somali. They're currently sitting with our publications office and should be available publicly, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Can't wait to send those out. We also have our dual language WAC that will be going live in early February. In February, on February 28th, DCYF will host an informational webinar on the designation. And then Yolanda, will you please do us the favor? Oh, she already did it. See, she's so fast. Yolanda just dropped a link to register for that webinar into the chat. And we hope to answer more of your questions at that webinar. Or rather, we hope to have answers to more of your questions at that webinar. The designation request will be opening in the springtime to providers. More information forthcoming on that. We are working closely with our partners over at UW Cultivate to get that out to you. We're also going to be working on some marketing videos for the dual language designation. And then we are going to continue developing coach and provider supports in coordination with you all and with our partners. Yeah, okay, so Zoom chat like had this update where things don't always come in the order that they should be. So I apologize for that. We will make sure that that registration link also gets sent out to you all. So we'll send everything from today. We will send it over to Patty so that she can distribute it to all of you. So don't worry about if you're losing links or can't find them in the chat. And I know we threw a lot at you today, and I'm sure there's a lot of questions. So I think we might have time for a couple of them. But as usual, please know that you are welcome to reach out to us via email. You're welcome to reach out to Patty or Sandy or Dawn, and they will definitely get the message over to us. But that concludes my part, our part. So I'll stop sharing my screen.
I have a question. What languages are going to be considered in the tribal language category? Like which ones are they going to accept? Is there some that aren't? Because I know there's a tribe that they're not recognized as a tribe.
All tribal languages will be recognized. The only requirement is that programs are participating in early achievers. Is that correct, Charlotte?
Yeah, that's a really interesting scenario, Eva. I think we should connect more about that. So it's a program that's operating that's not under the purview of a federally recognized tribe. That is very interesting. I hadn't considered that, so I'd love to connect more. If you can email us, that would be awesome.
I have a question. This came up in our breakout room that this might be further down the road, but is there going to be an opportunity for those classrooms that are multilingual, that have, there's some classes, for instance, in our breakout room that they had children that were learning Arabic, Spanish, and sign language. And there were one child in there that knew each of those languages. And I think we have a lot of communities that are focusing on 2 languages, but to recognize that this is a multilingual classroom. So that, and then we also had a discussion about dialects in that partner language, because a lot of times the kids are coming in with dialects, and if that's considered in there too. So anyway, another question, don't know if I got on the Jamboard.
So yes, we are considering multilingual programs that serve more than 2 languages, absolutely. If there are maybe more specific details around that, we'd have to look into it. But yeah, absolutely want to acknowledge the rich linguistic diversity that our children and families bring.
But would it come up multilingual, not just dual language classroom? Because I think multilingual, that's kind of a lot more work.
Certainly. So as far as the designation is called a dual language designation. If that program wanted to advertise that they're offering multilingual services, that's out of our scope, out of our purview. They can do whatever they want. Ulysses?
Hi, I have a question, but also just wanted to praise you all for doing this part of the funding and the work for multilingual and bilingual FCCs and centers, because it's very important and it's going to do a lot of help. I am also kind of thinking that when it comes to multiple rooms or multiple teachers and teachers that do speak a second language, that might be used and might be tokenized and be used to get this funding when it's not the center's primary to have that diversity and inclusivity when it comes to language. And how are we going to check that? to make sure that these teachers are not being tokenized, but they are being supported to use the language, their native language or their second language to in the classroom, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That is a really great question. And again, this is a place where I don't feel comfortable answering questions about how a center or a home runs their practice. I would lean on maybe Rachel or Charlotte or somebody else. If they have any insight on that question, please go for it. But yeah, I'm not in the business of telling anybody how to run their business. I really hope that nobody is being tokenized. That's not the purpose of this designation. But
I don't have an answer, but I want to thank you for the question. And I think that this is one of the things about this design process, and I've shared it with in other spaces too, is like we are really learning together. And, you know, the state is a half a step ahead of you coaches, and the coaches are a half a step ahead of the providers. And so there's a lot for us to learn in this process. And so if there are things like as we are implementing that you are finding, if you're hearing of situations like this, then absolutely, these are the things we need to know. And so I really appreciate you thinking critically about this and contemplating like what are some unintended consequences that could come about as we really, our intent is to make an investment in this practice and to support this work and absolutely not want to tokenize folks. And sometimes, but we know that sometimes our intent and the impact of implementation don't align. And so this is my invitation to you. Is to share that as you see things, if there are things that pop up as we're going along that do not align with a system that is striving to be anti-racist and to really advance equity, please bring that forward to us so we can address it in the moment.
I do see questions coming up, and just as Leah said, we will absolutely be saving the chat and answering these questions for you. We don't want you to leave thinking you asked a question and we didn't answer it. We do have answers, or we will have answers for you. Regina?
Hi, I have a question about the aligned curriculum list. Will like bilingual or other programs be added to that list so that programs that are choosing to, like, I have 4 programs that are exclusively like they are emergent Spanish programs. So they are there's very little English spoken there, and they are struggling with the curriculum part right now. So would they be added to the aligned curriculum list? And then another request, is there a way for DCYF to maybe get a discount with certain curriculums so that our programs could purchase them cheaper? Because I mean, cost is a big factor right now.
So a couple of things that come to mind is right now we are not requiring any specific curriculum for dual language, because we do acknowledge that, I mean, even in the K-12 world, there is very limited dual language curriculum. So our standards really point to best practices that can be used with any curriculum or any materials. Part of the funding awards for the dual language designation do include material purchases. So if that's something that you want to use a funding award for, you are absolutely welcome to do it. As far as discounts or anything, I'm gonna have to hand that one over to Rachel because I don't know how that works.
2 things I want to say about this. This is another great question that is really kind of on the leading edge of where we are developmentally in the design and implementation of the designation. We can certainly figure out if there is any discount that may exist for Washington State providers related to curriculum. I'm happy to take that on. But I think that, you know, it's such a great question to ask about, well, what about aligned curricula? And how are we going to make sure that as providers are implementing their curricula and we have expectations in early achievers around, you know, the curriculum standards that people are using, an evidence-based curriculum, or people are using a curriculum that is aligned with our Washington State Early Learning Development Guidelines, that we want to make sure that our dual language designation and the standards related to dual language are complementary to our early achievers processes. And so this is really, like, this is exactly the place we are right now in our design and development of this designation.